I can still picture the exact second everything changed. The room didn't just go quiet. It was the kind of silence that feels heavy and cold, not the warm kind that follows something beautiful. It felt like someone had slapped me in front of everyone and dared me not to cry. It happened at my brother Daniel's wedding. I stood up to speak, trying to keep my voice calm, even though my chest was tight with nerves. That's when Daniel's new wife, Kayla, stood on stage and, with a fake sweet smile, called me a pathetic single mom. The entire room burst out laughing. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was what my mother did next. She lifted her champagne glass and, loud enough for everyone and the microphone to hear, said, "She's like a discount model with a scratch label." That one sentence sent the laughter into a roar. Every guest, every fork, every bite of food just stopped. Their laughter grew louder, wrapping around me, squeezing me with shame. I sat there, frozen in my chair. My face burned, my ears buzzed, and my hands shook so much I couldn't even pick up my glass of water without spilling. So I just clenched my fists, hoping no one saw how badly I was shaking. My eyes searched for my brother Daniel at the head table. He stared down at his lap, his face empty. For a second, his eyes flicked to me, just a flash of guilt. Then he looked away like he couldn't stand to see me. That look hit me harder than anything else. Suddenly, I was 10 years old again, hiding behind the garage, listening to girls whisper about my cheap clothes and how strange I was. But this time, it wasn't strangers. It was my own family, people who were supposed to love me, making me feel small and unwanted. And for what? Just because I'm a single mom? Because I didn't fit their perfect picture like Kayla, who is now standing on stage in her flawless white dress, acting like she'd already won some contest. For the past year, I'd watched Kayla give me compliments that were just little stabs, like calling me brave for raising a child alone, as if I was some stray dog they found in the rain. And my mother, Cheryl, the same woman who once lovingly braided my hair, now looked at me like I was some old coupon, useless and thrown away. Her words hurt deeper than I could admit. Why did I still care what she thought? Was being a single mom all they could see? I sat perfectly still, pretending to smile even though it hurt. Next to me, my son James held a napkin tightly, his big brown eyes full of worry. He looked up at me and whispered, "Mom, why are they laughing at you?" That question broke something inside me. I wanted to answer, but the words just wouldn't come. How could I tell him that sometimes the people who are supposed to love us are the first to turn their backs? More than anything, I wanted to stand up, grab James's hand, and walk out the door without ever looking back. But before I could even move my chair to leave, James did something that I'll remember for the rest of my life. Without any hesitation, he stood up. He was only 10, but there was a quiet strength about him that didn't match his age. He started walking right toward the stage, as if he wasn't scared at all. Honestly, I should have known this wedding would be hard for me. Even before Kayla's rude comment, before my mother's mean little joke, and before all that awful laughter. The truth is, I'd already spent the whole day pretending I fit in, pretending I was someone my family could actually be proud of. That feeling started early in the morning. I stood in front of my mirror, trying to zip up a dress I got on clearance. It was a bit too tight and a little too fancy, but I needed something that didn't scream single mom trying her best. I tugged at the fabric, looked at myself from every angle, and tried to convince myself it looked okay. James came in while I was putting on makeup. "You look like a movie star," he said, his eyes wide with admiration. I smiled, even though I didn't feel beautiful at all. "Thanks, baby," I told him as I smoothed down his hair. "You're my favorite hype man." The drive to the wedding felt long. James hummed songs in the back seat, asking if Uncle Daniel was nervous. I just laughed and said, "Probably. Weddings can be scary." But what I didn't say out loud was what I thought. Family is scarier. Daniel and I used to be close. He's 6 years younger than me, and when our dad left, it felt like we only had each other. I helped him with his homework, covered for him when he snuck out, and held his hand during thunderstorms. For years, it was just us against the world. Everything changed when Daniel met Kayla. Kayla was the kind of person who always seemed so perfect. She walked into a room and made everyone else feel small. I tried my best to be friendly when Daniel first brought her home, but she made it clear from day one that I wasn't her kind of person. At one family dinner, she said, "It's so inspiring that you're doing this all on your own," using that voice people have when they want you to feel grateful for their pity. My mom, Cheryl, adored Kayla right away. I could see it in the way she listened to every word Kayla said, laughing at all her stories, even when they weren't funny. Mom never looked at me like that. With me, she was always distant and judgmental, like I was a reminder of everything she didn't want to see in herself. I used to think I was being too sensitive, but this wedding proved otherwise. The venue itself was beautiful. White roses everywhere, gentle violin music, candlelight sparkling off the gold-rimmed glasses. Every guest looked like they stepped out of a magazine. And then there was me, trying not to wrinkle my dress every time I sat down, adjusting the only pair of heels I owned, silently praying James wouldn't spill anything on his shirt and tie. James looked so proud in his little outfit. "Do I look grown up?" he asked, straightening his collar. "You look like the man of the hour," I told him, and I meant it. All night, I kept my smile in place. I nodded, made small talk, and laughed at jokes that weren't funny. I held my head high, even when I noticed the sideways glances from Kayla's friends. I was surviving, until that moment at the microphone. When it happened, all the strength I'd built up, all my pride, and years of pretending to fit in, came crashing down. The laughter felt like 1,000 tiny daggers. At that moment, when I looked at James, I saw something new in his eyes. It wasn't fear or confusion, it was a kind of quiet protection. He wasn't going to let them laugh at me, not without standing up for me first. I watched, barely breathing, as he got up from his chair and started walking toward the stage. At first, I honestly thought James was confused. Maybe he was just going to grab a napkin, or he was following the music, or, honestly, I didn't know what he was doing. I just hoped he would come right back and that all the eyes on us would look away, that I could somehow disappear into my seat and forget I'd just been laughed at in front of a room full of people. But James kept going, step after step, his shoes tapping across the shiny floor like a slow countdown I couldn't stop. People began to notice. Chairs turned, and whispers floated through the room. "Is that her son?" someone muttered. I felt every stare burning into my skin. Half standing, I reached out and called to him, my voice low and tense. "James, come back here." But he didn't even look at me. He just walked right up the steps onto the stage, where Kayla had stood earlier, her bouquet sitting like a prize she didn't deserve. The DJ tried to lean down and steer him away gently, but then Daniel, my brother, lifted his hand and said, "Let him speak." The room hushed instantly. My heart raced. There was my sweet, shy, video game-loving 10-year-old, gripping the microphone stand with both hands like it was the only thing holding him up. He looked so tiny against all the tall white roses, but somehow, to me, he looked like the bravest person in the room. Everyone stopped to watch. Even my mother set down her champagne. Kayla, who had just been giggling with her bridesmaids, turned to look at James, her smile stiffening. The whole room felt like it was holding its breath. Then James spoke, clear and strong. "I know something about the bride," he said. He didn't shake or stammer. My heart beat so loud I could barely hear anything else. "Please," I silently begged, "don't say anything embarrassing. Please, just don't make this harder for yourself." Kayla leaned forward with a fake sweet voice. "What are you talking about, sweetheart?" But I could hear a crack in her tone. James ignored her. He glanced at me just for a moment, and I saw everything in his eyes. His worry, his anger, and his courage. Then he faced the crowd again. "I heard her say something," James said, his voice calm and sure. The whole room gasped, cold air sweeping through the guests. Kayla's face flickered with panic. I felt frozen, as if the floor might give out beneath me. Everything was still, as if the whole room was holding on to that 1 second before everything changed. My mind raced. What had James heard? He'd been with me all day. He couldn't have been with Kayla alone, could he? And then I remembered earlier that afternoon, I'd sent him to find the restroom. While I helped Daniel fix his boutonniere, I sent James off to find the bathroom. It couldn't have been more than 10 minutes. That's all it took for everything to change. He must have overheard something important in that short time. Now, as James stood at the microphone, the silence in the room was stretched so thin it could break at any second. No one spoke. No one moved. I felt like I was underwater, sounds and lights blurring around me, everyone shifting uncomfortably in their seats. My heart was pounding in my ears like a warning drum, letting me know something huge was about to happen, something I couldn't undo. James's small hands gripped the microphone, his forehead creased in concentration like when he tried to solve a hard puzzle or win a tough level in a video game. But this was no game. I couldn't even breathe. Part of me wanted to run up there, pull him off the stage, and remind him that I was the adult, that it wasn't his job to fix this, that I had survived worse. Barely, but I had. Still, another part of me, the part still burning from everyone's laughter, knew I couldn't stop him. James had made up his mind. He was standing up for me, for himself, for both of us. I saw it written all over his face. He cleared his throat. In that silent room, even that tiny sound echoed. "I was looking for the bathroom," James said softly, his voice clear and steady. He glanced at me, this time for longer, and I knew what he was thinking. "You always told me to speak the truth."
"I'm just doing what you taught me."
Tears slipped down my cheek, and I quickly wiped them away. "I walked past this room before the wedding," he continued, looking around at all the grown-ups. "I heard Kayla talking to one of her friends." Kayla shifted in her seat, her mouth opening like she wanted to stop him, but she stayed quiet. Maybe she knew she couldn't stop what was coming. James's voice didn't even shake. "She said she didn't want to marry Uncle Daniel." Gasps spread through the room. Someone dropped a fork. People sat up straighter, eyes wide in shock. James kept going. "She said she just needed someone stable, someone who'd give her a house and wouldn't question her when she went out late. She said Daniel was too nice to ever say no." His words hung in the air like smoke, thick and hard to breathe. Kayla sat frozen, her eyes locked on James. She muttered, "That's not true," but nobody paid attention. Everyone was staring at James now. He paused, and I felt something in my stomach twist, knowing more was coming. Then he finished. "She said once they were married, she'd make sure people like my mom never showed up again." This time the silence was complete. Not shocked, not curious. Heavy, like a blanket of truth, or shame, or grief. James looked at Kayla, then at Daniel, and finally out at the guests. He took a deep breath. "She said my mom was embarrassing," James said, his voice shaking just a little. "But she's not. She's kind.
She's brave.
She works hard, and she never talks bad about anyone." At that moment, my heart just broke open. I didn't care what happened next. I didn't care who tried to hide it or who believed my son. All I cared about was James, my strong, honest boy, standing there, showing everyone what it means to have courage. Right there, on that wedding stage, my son did something most adults would never have the courage to do. He told the truth. Without even realizing it, James completely changed the course of the night. The room didn't just go quiet. It froze as if time itself had stopped to listen. After James spoke, his words felt like a bomb dropping in the middle of that flawless, picture-perfect wedding hall. Kayla's bright smile disappeared. Her face turned pale, lips parted in shock. She looked around desperately, maybe hoping someone would step in to defend her, maybe wishing she could disappear. No one came to help her. Daniel stood up slowly, not in a big, dramatic way, but more like someone trying to stand strong in the middle of a storm. His voice was tight when he spoke. "James, can you come here, bud?" James nodded, calm as always, and walked over to him. Daniel bent down and whispered something I couldn't hear, then hugged James for a long time. That's when I realized Daniel wasn't angry. He looked heartbroken. Daniel straightened, looking lost, searching the crowd for answers. Finally, he turned to Kayla. "Did you say that?" His voice cracked with pain. Kayla blinked, trying to put on a smile, but it looked more like a grimace. "Daniel, come on. He's a kid. You're going to believe him over your fiancé?" she said. He didn't answer, so Kayla pushed on, her voice rising. "This is ridiculous. I was just joking with my friends. You know how girls talk before weddings. We vent. We say dumb stuff. He probably misunderstood. He's only 10. But no one seemed to believe her anymore. The whole mood in the room shifted. People who had been laughing with Kayla earlier now whispered, exchanging glances, shaking their heads. Then, from the back of the room, a voice spoke up, one I hadn't expected. I heard her too. Heads turned. It was Christina, one of Daniel's old friends, someone who had drifted away after Kayla came around. Christina stood up, her hands clenched at her sides. I went into the bridal suite to give Kayla her shoes. She didn't see me, but I heard everything she said. She said exactly what James just told you, all of it. The tension in the room snapped. Kayla's face twisted, caught between anger and panic. Are you all seriously doing this to me on my wedding night? She demanded, but nobody answered. She was the only one still talking. Daniel looked absolutely crushed, like the ground had disappeared under his feet, and he was still falling. He looked at Kayla, voice broken. I asked you so many times, Kayla. I asked if you loved me, and if you were sure. And you always said yes. Kayla's face softened. She tried to reach for his hand, but he stepped back. Daniel, she started, but he shook his head. I don't know what's true anymore, he said. But I know my nephew didn't just make that up. And I know my sister never deserved the way we treated her. His words hit me harder than anything that night, sharp, sudden, and full of truth. For the first time, someone saw me. Kayla didn't scream or cry. She just stood there, frozen, and then turned and walked out of the room. Her heels clicked faster and faster on the tile until the sound faded away. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then someone started clapping. And then another. Then the whole room started to clap. It wasn't wild or loud, but it was steady and real. The applause wasn't for Kayla or Daniel, it was for James. For having the courage to speak the truth when nobody else would. I sat there with my hand over my mouth, tears streaming down my face and soaking my napkin. Somehow, in the most embarrassing moment of my life, my son had given me back my voice. After that, everything became a blur. The applause faded, and people started to get up, moving toward the bar or drifting back to their tables. No one knew exactly what to do next. The perfect, fairy tale wedding had broken into pieces, and something raw and honest hung in the air instead. Eventually, Daniel came over to me. I stood up, trying to wipe away tears that just wouldn't stop, ready for whatever he might say. But he didn't speak at first. Instead, he hugged me, a real hug, tight and long, the kind you give someone when you finally see them for who they are. I'm sorry, he whispered. God, Gloria, I'm so sorry. I hugged him back, letting myself finally relax for a moment. Years of distance and pain seemed to melt away as a wall between us had finally cracked. I didn't know if everything would be perfect from then on, but I knew that, at last, my brother saw me. That was more than I ever expected. Later that night, James and I sat in the car, the parking lot almost empty, the wedding venue glowing behind us. I looked at him in the rearview mirror, his little face tired and soft, his suit jacket off, bow tie loose, curls damp from all the stress. Are you okay, baby? I asked quietly. He nodded and then asked, Are you okay, Mom? That question meant more than anything anyone said at that wedding. I took a deep breath. I think I am, I answered honestly. I think I'm okay. He was quiet for a moment, then he said, You're not a discount model, Mommy. You're the best mom in the world. Tears filled my eyes again, but this time they felt warm and healing, like gentle rain after a long, hot day. That night, I tucked James into bed as always, but I hugged him a little tighter. I kissed his forehead, smoothed his hair, and whispered, I'm so proud of you, James. You are so brave. He smiled, already half asleep. You taught me, he said. And in that small moment, everything changed for me. I used to think being a single mom meant I was less than, like I was damaged or not enough.
But my son never saw me that way.
When he stood up for me in front of everyone, he reminded me of something I'd forgotten. I'm not weak. I'm not broken. I'm just human, and I've survived a lot. Daniel ended up putting off his honeymoon. He said he needed time to think. We talked a few days later, really talked, and for the first time in years, I felt like we were building something real between us. Not perfect, but honest. Cheryl, my mother, never apologized. She sent a cold text a week later. I'm sure you understand. Things got out of hand. Hope you're doing well. I didn't reply. And for the first time in my life, I didn't need her approval. I had James, and I had myself. People always say weddings bring families together. For me, this one didn't. Instead, it took away all the fake smiles and showed us the truth. I didn't lose anything that night. I gained clarity and I found my voice again. And in the end, I found a kind of pride that no fancy dress or perfect image could ever give me. I realized I was never the one with the scratch label. I was the one who kept her dignity, even when others threw theirs away for something shiny or easy. And the person who reminded me of my worth was a 10-year-old boy in a clip-on tie, holding my hand and showing more courage than most adults ever do. So, that's the story of how my son, my brave, wonderful 10-year-old, stood up in front of a whole wedding and changed everything just by telling the truth and speaking from his heart. If this story touched you, made you feel something, or reminded you of your strength, please give this video a like. It helps others find these stories. And if you believe in standing up for what's right, even when it's scary, share the story with someone who needs a little hope.